Hello, you. You're listening to A History of Italy. Episode 195, The Italian Wars Part 12, The Sack of Rome, again, and The End of the Sforza.
Tra due salici piangenti, io ritrovo la speranza di un amore che ormai fu.
Before we start, a message from a fellow podcaster.
Hello everybody, this is Ferenc from The History of the Hungarians. Another weave in the grand historical tapestry Mike spoke of in his first episode. The History of the Hungarians aims to discuss the tale of a 1,000-year-old kingdom and its people. So come, join us on History of the Hungarians, available wherever you get your podcasts. And let's put that down as the last Hungarian invasion of Italy, shall we? Now, back to Mike.
So there you are. If you want a more complete view of some of the topics that we just touch upon, head over and listen to the History of the Hungarians. We last left off with the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V gaining control over most of the peninsula of Italy after the Battle of Pavia in 1425, in which the King of France, Francis I, was captured. The Italian powers then realized, after many, including Pope Clement VII, Giulio de Medici, had sided with the emperor, that they didn't like the new situation and banded against him, forming in 1526 the League of Cognac, which included France, Venice, Florence, the Pope, the Duchy of Milan, and, as protectorate, Henry VIII of England. Not only was the whole business, unfortunately, nothing to do with drinking spirits, but it was a rather sneaky affair that wasn't done well at all. It was officially a league to counter the Turks, which could theoretically have been open to Charles, but nobody actually invited him, and what's more, it seems there were actual secret talks with the Turks to get them on board the anti-Turkish League. The League members also tried to invite the Marquis of Pescara, Alfonso III, who had fought along with Charles, but had expressed some dissatisfaction with the rewards he had received. However, this wasn't enough to flip him, and he went along with the League all the time acting as a spy for the emperor, so he knew what was going on the whole time. Another element which really annoyed the emperor was that the League was also calling into question the legitimacy of the Spanish claim to the Kingdom of Naples, with the idea of giving it to the French again, but with Clement secretly hoping to hand it over to a member of his family and actually having a Medici king on the throne of Naples. Command of the main army of the League was placed under Francesco della Rovere, Duke of Urbino, with the Venetians having their own little army, and support from one of the few remaining mercenary captains, that of Giovanni dalle Bande Nere, John of the Black Bands. We've met him before. He was the son of Giovanni Medici of a cadet branch of the family, and one Caterina Sforza. The whole Black Bands business was a sign of mourning in honor of the first Medici Pope, Leo X. Don't worry, we'll stop and take a closer look at Giovanni dalle Bande Nere soon. Hostilities were opened in June 1426, with the Venetians managing to take Lodi near Milan. That was about the extent of the success of the League. Charles, who, as we said, had known what was going on all along, sent an army that included around 12,000 to 16,000 German Landsknecht soldiers under the command of Georg von Funsberg. They had made their way down through the Trentino region, supported by local lords there to avoid the territory of the Venetians. The first to be knocked out of the picture was the by now puppet Duke of Milan, Francesco II Sforza. For his adherence to the League, he saw his city surrounded by the Spanish Imperials, and without help from the League commander della Rovere on the horizon, he was forced to surrender the duchy. The next to fall was Giovanni dalle Bande Nere, who was taken out by a little treachery on the imperial side. You see, the Duke of Ferrara, Alfonso d'Este, and the Marquis of Mantua, soon to be Duke, Federico II, had kept to themselves in all of this cognac business, not siding openly with either side. In reality, they were talking to the emperor. So it was that Giovanni got a nasty surprise when the German commander von Funsberg whipped out some spanking new state-of-the-art artillery pieces which were the favourite toys of the Duke of Ferrara, widower of one Lucrezia Borgia. What's more, along the river came ships and troops from Mantua. In the ensuing fight at Governolo, near Mantova, Giovanni dalle Bande Nere was hit in the knee by an artillery shot that smashed it to pieces. As a true Sforza, he lay calmly chatting to the doctor as his leg was removed. He let then some emotion show when he took his own leg and threw it in disgust, swearing against the cowardice and indecision of the Pope. He died a few days later, on the 30th of November, 1526. At this point, the Pope in question bowed to the growing pressure of Emperor Charles, exerted through the Duke of Ferrara, the Republic of Siena, and the Colonna family of Rome. Clement VII left the League of Cognac. He thought that would have been it. He was so confident in his truce with Charles that he even disbanded the troops that he had mustered for the defense of Rome. The Colonna had been waiting for just such an opportunity. They used the moment of weakness to raid Rome, doing a bit of pillaging in September 1526. Clement managed to get it together, and in collaboration with the historical rivals of the Colonna, the Orsini, he organized a counterattack on the Colonna strongholds, including our old haunting ground, Tagliacozzo. A far greater danger was looming. The army of lanzknechts was still in Italy, and despite the orders of their commanders, they were not ready to head home. Their bloodlust was up. Many of them were supporters of Martin Luther and his crusade against the depravity and corruption of the Church. They had their sights set on what they considered to be the new Babylon, the city of Rome. They headed down past Florence and through the friendly territories of Siena. By early May, they were near Rome. Della Rovere and the army of the League of Cognac followed at a distance, but did not engage. On the morning of the 6th of May, a heavy fog fell on the city, and the artillery unit stationed in defense of the city at Castel Sant'Angelo could see nothing. The mercenary army took an area of Rome to the west of the Tiber known as the Gianicolo. A small militia commanded by Lorenzo Orsini was there to offer some form of resistance. The barons of Rome, in opposition to Clement's attempts to curb their power and effect agricultural reform, were not interested in sticking their necks out for him. The citizens, oppressed by taxes, even less. After 4 hours, the besieging army managed to make a breach in the Leonine walls, and a total bloodbath began. An orgy of gratuitous violence, fueled by bloodlust, sexual lust, and religious fanaticism began. The raping and killing spared no one, men, women, children, lay or clergy. Everyone was a potential target, including the imperial agents in the city. By the first evening, the troops had taken all of Rome, and around 6,000 already lay dead in the streets, their bodies starting to decay. The city was organized into different areas for pillaging. Many were tortured, so they would reveal where they had hidden their valuables, the hiding places often being latrines and the sewers, which the horde smashed, adding raw sewage to the piles of putrefying bodies, fueling an epidemic of disease that would make no difference between attackers and defenders. Nothing was sacred. Houses and churches alike were pillaged, riches and religious art taken away. To this day, you can find lanzknecht graffiti on Raphael frescoes glorifying Luther and Emperor Charles V. Tombs were urinated on, smashed, and the troops even set up a parody election of a new pope. Existing Pope Clement just managed to make it from the Vatican to Castel Sant'Angelo using the raised walkway that Pope Borgia had used to go and visit his lovers. Many of his Swiss guards gave their lives to save his. In the following days, the fire started, destroying hundreds of buildings and setting back the renewal of the Eternal City. Many important architects and artists fled, putting an end to the glory days of the Renaissance in Rome, and although more was still to come, it would never reach the same heights. The invading soldiers would stay on for around 10 months. In that time, it is estimated that between the killings and the epidemic, around 30,000 inhabitants of Rome lost their lives, reducing the city to little more than a town. It is said that in all of the time the churches remained empty and no bells could be heard ringing. The bodies of people and animals were buried together in mass graves. The army of the League of Cognac showed up, but simply stayed outside and did not intervene. On the 6th of June, after a month of being holed up in Castel Sant'Angelo, the Pope surrendered, accepting to pay compensation and to give up the ports of Ostia and Civitavecchia. The Pope would eventually escape in December, dressed as a monk, and would only partially fulfill his promises. Meanwhile, the administration of the Papal States crumbled, and the local lords rushed to get their possessions back. The Malatesta got back Rimini, the Este, Modena and Reggio, and the Baglioni returned to Perugia. Venice also took back Ravenna and Cervia. Other locations closer to Rome, such as Narni, Spoleto, and Todi, were attacked by out-of-control bands of roving soldiers. In a personal blow to the Pope, the Medici were once more ousted from Florence, and a new republic was formed. The republic also took the odd step of having Jesus Christ as its king, but we'll get there in a few episodes. The blame game started between the Pope, accused of having brought the whole thing on himself, and the Emperor, who was accused of letting the whole thing happen, if not actually encouraging it. It was potentially a pivotal moment. The Papal States had practically ceased to exist for the time being, and there were calls upon Charles to set up a new system in which the papacy oversaw only the realm of the spirit and gave up governing a worldly entity under the protection of the empire. This would then theoretically allow the Church to focus on the reform which was so badly needed, as shown by the increasing popularity of the Protestant movement. In the end, realpolitik won out. Charles needed a strong and moderately content pope to deal with said Protestant movement in his lands, starting from the organization of a council to condemn Luther. So they made up and became friends, more or less, and the treaties of Barcelona of 1529 and of Bologna the following year put an end to the specifically Italian part of the Italian Wars. There had been a last-ditch attempt by the French to get in on the game, and in 1528 an army had been sent under General Lautrec to actually seize Naples. The army managed to sack Pavia in revenge for the battle there in 1525, and it was this army that ended up mopping up the last pockets of Landsknecht troops from Rome, whose number had been dwindling due to disease and many just getting bored and leaving. Speaking of disease, the French army managed to reach the walls of Naples, found an epidemic there, lost many men, and had to pack up and go home. The control of the empire and Spanish over Italy had increased, but Charles was also quite clever in not immediately pushing for absolute and total dominance. But he set up a series of alliances and vassal states. He would promote the return of the Medici to Florence, and as we said, we'll look into that. He made the Marquises of Mantua dukes, and he left Francesco II Sforza in control of the Duchy of Milan, despite Francesco being suspected of trying to set up a plot against the emperor. Francesco had taken the place of his older brother, Ercole Massimiliano, who was more interested in having a good time and getting with the ladies, or burning hundreds of so-called witches, than governing a duchy. In any case, both the emperor and the duke knew the latter was just a puppet. Despite this, Francesco tried his best to get control of the finances of the duchy, reeling from the recent wars and straining under the weight of the reparation payment to be made to the emperor, under some semblance of control. The guy was actually doing a half-decent job of it, and he even got to the point where he could start to reduce some of the more hated taxes, such as those on grain. There was a last dwindling hope for the future of the Sforza, if only Francesco could marry, and then the couple could give birth to a male heir. Unfortunately, any marriage would have required the approval of the de facto ruler of the duchy, the emperor. The catch was that the peace treaty signed by Charles and Francesco stated that, if there were no Sforza heirs, the throne of Milan would pass under the direct control of the empire. You can imagine that Charles was in no hurry to see Francesco married, and managed to use a series of delay tactics. In the end, he accepted to marry his niece, the pre-adolescent Christina of Denmark, to Francesco, so at least, if an heir did come out of it, it would be of Charles's bloodline. It is of some minor consolation to know that Francesco had quite a few scruples and was very patient with his young bride, but in the end, the marriage was consummated when she was only 12. No heir was born, with the added shame of Francesco being considered sterile, although he did have other illegitimate children. They didn't get a lot more time to try. On the 24th of October, 1535, at the age of just 40, Francesco II Sforza died. The dynasty that had started with a Francesco now ended with one. You could say that the death of the last Sforza marked an end to the period of Italian history that started with the free communes and saw them gradually transform into the signoria, the hereditary rule of a single dynasty. There were, of course, still independent entities in Italy, the Savoy in the northwest, the Este of Ferrara, the Gonzaga of Mantua, and of course the Republic of Venice, just to name a few. But they would be, for some time to come, minor players in a foreign play. Thank you very much for listening. A History of Italy is a Sentire Media podcast, created and hosted by me, Mike Corradi, and produced by my wonderful Patreon supporters, whom I would like to thank starting from the second part of the Galileo Galilei and Margherita hack level, and they are Jeffrey W., John W., Joni T., John Jones, Jordan, Joshua, Julia G., Justin E., Kelly, Kyle D., Laurie B., Old John in Milwaukee, Mark P., Michus Porchus, Moppet King, M.S., Nonna, Paradise, Patrizia K, Robin S., Rocco B., Rod L., Russell F., Sean P., Sean M., Shelby, Shelley, Simon O., Stephen M., Tap Dance Down Under, and Thomas C. And of course, we can never forget the tippy-top Maria Montessori and Dante Alighieri level, Lisa K., Peter W., David L., David C., Sen, David A., Karen D., Brigid, Dallas, Joseph V., Stephen G., and Julian. Thank you, one and all, and welcome aboard to new Patreon supporters. Robin S., Kelly M., MS, and Ivan K. Thank you very much for your support. If, like them, you would like to become a Patreon supporter and have access to extra content, not a lot, but it is there, and become part of the community, you can go to ahistoryofitaly.com, go to the support page, and click on the Patreon icon. Or if you'd just like to give a one-time donation, we will be more than pleased, thank you very much, for a PayPal donation. If instead you'd just like to get in touch, which is fantastic, hello@ahistoryofitaly.com, or you can follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Once again, thank you very much for listening, and until next time, arrivederci.